FEM labour among branches and stems, dissolving the binary of work and existence. In the deep palm of the Scottish winter, the herbs outside my back door are doing all they can to hold on to life. The thyme is a twig, the lemon balm has made itself so small, and the lavender is a woven ball of wooden wires. Snowdrops have pushed up and decorate my small soil desert. I love my little garden. Even in winter, every plant works so hard. And I catch myself. Do I mean work? Do the plants labour? I struggle to see it because I don't imagine them labouring, meaning suffering, meaning pushing through pain. But what needs to be done to survive doesn't need to be seen as painfully laborious or counter to rest. To work is natural. Maybe to divide it from its capitalist appropriation of exploitation and profit means to take lessons from the ecological. I'm reminded of how feminine labour is often invisibilised, how a woman's hobbies are restful and easy, while men's hobbies are productive and skillful. How women's emotional labour of absorbing or managing a conflict in a relationship are normalised. How childcare and domestic work are rarely talked about as work at all. Of course, it's not always women who do these jobs, but they are historically put on women. They're particularly taken on by femmes of colour, trans femmes and disabled femmes. When I refer to feminine labour or femininity, I want to be clear that I'm referring to its most intersectional meaning. Femininity is a broad category, and it can overlap with many other identities that give it unique depths. A disabled person's femininity is different to that of an abled person. A black person's is different from that of a white person, etc. In this way, discussing feminine labour needs to be thought of as crip feminine labour, trans feminine labour, femme of colour labour. Each of these and more give us an even deeper understanding of what feminine labour is. So if I write feminine labour and you think of a thin, cis, white, able-bodied woman, I ask you now to think of another example to guide you through this text. Looking at examples of childcare and managing conflicts, it's not just that they have a historical grounding in femininity. I notice they are skills required to maintain an environment, both emotionally and physically. Perhaps that is the definition of most feminine labour. Like the work of the biome of the garden to maintain an ecosystem in all seasons, feminine labour is about making space for things to flow organically, allowing a child to grow by clothing them, allowing a relationship to sustain by managing its domestic balance, allowing a conversation to go gently by monitoring the emotional realities at play. Every woman and femme knows the price of refusing this labour. Though our work is invisible, its effects benefit all around and are noticed when absent. This is what makes them environment-based. In a society that never prioritises women's healthcare, or in fact, any healthcare that is not for cis white men, it seems obvious that the feminine labour of maintaining the body is another link to the natural world. Women have to be in touch with their bodies in ways that white cis men don't, whether it is through hormones, fertility, embodied stress, shaving, skincare, nutrition. Anyone who is not a cis white man needs to make up for a lack of care provided by a systemic healthcare and social norms. As trans people, we fight for bodily autonomy, whilst already putting so much extra work into maintaining our bodies ourselves. As disabled folk, we fight for access to aid while navigating our own chronic pain and fatigue daily. Women of colour fight against medical violence and access to appropriate healthcare. Environmental labour and feminine labour are entwined, and they are political. Plants are constantly monitoring their environments. They look out for changes in case they need to alter their gene expression. They actively prepare for the winter to survive it. Cell membranes have to be maintained even in dormancy. Proteins are broken down and remade while they sleep at night. By comparing this nature labour with feminine labour, it could seem that it downplays the latter. But I want to open the other possibility and consider what it would mean to loosen the binary of active work and passive existence. Nature offers exactly the deconstruction we need, and I believe a fresh understanding of feminine labour reveals itself when we go closer. It makes me think of artistic labour, how it is often not seen as real work, and usually the reason is because it's seen as more fun, which would mean real work is not fun. You can work, you can have fun, but each negate the other. To work whilst having fun can to some look like the work is not hard and that it uses energy. I think of the scolding employers of my past selves and my friends telling me or them that we are being paid to work, not to have fun. The message is received clear. To work hard is to appear stoic, and in some cases is to suffer. So the more stoic you are, or the more pain you are in, the harder you have apparently worked. I don't believe this. I think very few people would admit they do, but nevertheless, it is something that every artist has encountered more than once, as well as many others. It is also interesting to note that Stoicism is traditionally a masculine trait, valued because it is serious and manly, as if the two features cannot be untangled within its definition. I want to detach the word existence from not labour. We are born labouring. Our bodies have always been at work. Our brains have always been at work. We work to eat. We work to talk. We work to love. In a way, our natural state is labour. Feminine labour is often found in this natural state, or it is about maintaining this natural state in ourselves and others. Food is a great example. We have to eat. And because of this, feeding ourselves and feeding each other is rarely seen as true labour. Traditionally, it's been feminine labour to feed. Without it, it is not simply that a job doesn't get done, it is that people don't eat. Our bodies aren't maintained. We begin to witness the blurring of existence and labour. They become inseparable. My chronically ill and disabled body announces daily that its work to exist is invisible and vast. That the labour it has taken on in this lifetime will be made up greatly by managing my energy so I can feed myself, staying alert to pain levels, keeping my body awake enough to move through a day, setting boundaries to keep my health in check. This connects my disability to my femininity in a web of labour. Not labour as suffering, but labour as environmental maintenance and care. It's a very different conversation whether or not plants are conscious of the labour they perform, but I guess I don't believe it matters. A key aspect of environment labour is that it becomes second nature, because we enter into a symbiosis with our environment where it requires that we make its care a daily practice, and in return, it supports us. If we don't feel like we are in this dynamic, it's usually because someone else is supporting our environment for us, through inherited wealth, systemic exploitation of workers, material rewards of social privilege. The ivy swims between the snowdrops, threading itself with such consideration. The baker slices and sculpts the cake, the biologist delicately pipettes the solution, the social worker tightropes the line of efficiency and care. Any gardener who's fought off the vines or invasive species that encroach will tell you the work is regular and relentless. It seems only right to offer the other participants in this battle, the plants they fight, the same respect for their efforts, their strategy, their labour, regardless of whether these plants are conscious of what they're doing, whatever that means. Even in my language here, I find myself resting on an analogy of fighting and a battle to prove the validity of labour. More words entrenched in masculinity that are used to justify a labour as true labour. It is by finding a seat in my heart for nature labour that I then look to the side and see a seat held for my own environment labour, almost entirely feminine coded, and the environment labour of the other women and femmes in my life. My mother's drive to keep the peace and to stay calm in a crisis. My trans sisters who offer their spaces and resources to anyone who needs it at any time, often to grant someone an environment to begin with. members of my communities who always make sure safety and food and well-being are taken care of when we are together. This is not the work that brings in money. It is neither the work that is seen as worthwhile or sometimes even as work at all, but it is no less laborious than the snowdrop straining against the earth from below, or the ivy calculating its plan of attack. To compare feminine labor with traditionally masculine labor has been done 1,000 times, and there are many works that show the inequalities there. I want to invoke a comparison that doesn't just say feminine labor is just as valid as masculine labor, but instead lets us see feminine labor as something uniquely close to nature's labor of environment, with its own specificities and necessity. An enviable position, I reckon. Labors mentioned. Emotional labor. Work to sustain or fake an emotion beyond what feels organic. Environment labor. Work to sustain an environment, including a body, a home, a relationship, a planet, seen more saliently in the natural world. Feminine labor. Work typically done by women and femmes, often because it is culturally coded as a feminine activity, usually lands on those at the intersections of identities. Financial labor. Work in exchange for money. Nature labor. The work of the natural world to function, grow, and sustain itself. True labor. Work that is commonly recognized as taking energy and having purpose.